be talking about the Goliath syndrome. Most of you know who Goliath was. David and Goliath is a familiar story in the Bible, so we all know that. But we never really think of all the giants in our lives that we actually have to conquer, the ones that keep coming back. And when I say Goliath syndrome, it's those giants that just keep coming at us and keep causing us to be afraid and keep us from living out our potential and our purpose. You all remember that movie with Will Smith. We all love those stories, don't we, of just when the little guy overcomes and he's able to conquer that giant and he wins. You know, those football movies and the movie like Will Smith, the movie that he was in, Pursuit of Happiness, where his character, Christopher Gardner, had invested everything he had in this medical device, and it failed. And he found himself just at a point in his life where I call really a crisis, a faith crisis, where he's having to say, what am I going to do now? How many of us have been there where we just felt like disappointed, where we felt like expectations we had weren't met? And that's where he found himself. He had lost everything. He lost his bank account, he lost his house, and eventually he lost his wife, which was extremely devastating for him. And he had to take his little son out on the streets and try to make it. And through the movie, you're just sitting there agonizing with him and thinking, oh, I know he's going to make it. I know he's going to get through this. And you know, I know if he just keeps pressing in, he's going to be okay. And you're kind of cheering him on out there in the audience. And it's so amazing when you actually see him persevere and press through and come through that and come out on the other side. But how hard was it for him? How hard was it when he was having to train and learn a whole new industry? But he didn't quit. Even after that other failure, he kept going. But how easy would it have been for him to say, I just give up. I can't do this anymore. I'm too afraid. Look at what I did. I already failed. I can't keep going. And so we love those kind of stories. We love those happy ending stories. And that's what David and Goliath was about. You know, God is so, I love in the Bible how he describes people, don't you? I mean, he actually gives us visual pictures. And in the Bible, it talks about how that Goliath stood over 9 feet tall. Now, I'm probably, you know, my children tease me and say I kind of cheat a little bit and say I'm 5'5", and they think I'm only 5'4½", but I really feel like I'm 5'5". The thought of somebody being over 9 feet tall next to me, I'm sorry, but I would be afraid. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I would conquer so much fear that I wouldn't be afraid of someone standing next to me that big. And not only that, but he was covered head to toe in bronze armor that weighed over 100 pounds. And he had a big spear right next to him. It was so huge, and it had an iron tip weighing 15 pounds. Now, if that's not intimidation, I don't know what is, okay? So when we think about the giants in our lives, that's what they're like. They're like this big 9-foot guy that is looking down over us, hovering over us in just intimidation. And we feel paralyzed with fear. And here's David, this little guy, this little skinny guy. He's just a shepherd boy. What made him different than all those other people? And I'm sure there was people more qualified, smarter, bigger, but they were too afraid. That was the only difference. David said, oh, you know what, I'm going to do this. I'm going to step up and I'm going to be the one. And David's own family, his brother, questioned the motives of his heart, saying that his heart was evil because he wanted to go and conquer Goliath. And sometimes that's the case. Sometimes even our own family and friends come against us in times where we need them the most. And that's when we have to look to the Lord. So David, later God says that David was a man after God's own heart. So we know that his heart wasn't evil when he stepped forward to conquer Goliath. David was bold, and he was not ashamed to say that he came in the name of the Lord. And that's what he said. That was the first thing he said. He said, I come in the name of the Lord. He declared who he was immediately with Goliath. He said to Goliath, he looked him straight in the face and he said, I come in the name of the Lord God. And why do you think he did that? Instead of having the big sword next to him, he wanted him to know who his God is and that his God is much bigger than that circumstance. So tonight we're going to identify the possible Goliaths in our lives. We're going to take a diagnostic test to determine if we need that perspective change. Just like what I was talking about with, Pat and Sally, their different perspectives of what cold is. We all have the way we see things, the way we envision them. Some may think, a 9-foot man, that's no problem for me. And others may be totally petrified. So whatever your giants are, we have to look at how we see those giants in our lives is so important to determine how we're able to overcome the fear of them.